please join me in welcoming Scott Sigler.
Thanks, guys. So welcome to Google, Scott. Thanks for coming today. I wanted to invite you here for two reasons. One, I'm a really big fan, and just wanted to sit down and talk with you. And two, Google is a innovation and technology company, and I think, maybe not in your past career, but definitely when it comes to writing and publishing, you've definitely been innovative and, done some different things in the writing world. So for all of those that don't know, can you share really how you got started and how your career kind of kicked off?
Well, I pretty much knew what I wanted to do, I think since the 3rd or 4th grade, that I wanted to be a novelist. That's what I wanted to do for a living. After reading a Stephen King book, I read Silver Bullet by Stephen King, and I was like, this is great, I want to do this. Movies were also an influence on that. But so went to college for journalism, figured I would just get a lot of repetition writing. So I tried to find a job I could do, which was, unfortunately, it was easy. I was very lazy. I'm like, if there's an essay, I got that part nailed. So I'll just go into something that's all writing, and then I don't actually have to work for a living. Didn't turn out quite that way.
Right.
Was in newspapers for a few years, then got into a software company that did publishing for newspapers, and from that point, I was fully committed to getting an agent, getting a publisher, and becoming an author. And that took about 10 years, and finally got a deal with AOL Time Warner, who had a very early, an early version of Reddit, but for publishing, where you would upload 3 chapters of your book, yep. And then other people would vote on it, and it was called iPublish, and then the editors only reviewed the first, like the top 5% of vote getters. So it's a great way for them to deal with a slush pile. Got a deal with them, had a book called Earthcore that was supposed to be out in every store in May of 2001, or May of 2002, excuse me. Then 9/11 recession, they shut down the imprint, and I had no print deal whatsoever. So I was sitting on a professionally published book, or professionally edited book, excuse me, and from 2002, 2005, couldn't get any interest going for it again, and then learned about podcasting. And for podcasting, I'm like, oh, this is great, serialized content. I'm going to go find some audiobooks to listen to, because I just assumed people were putting out audiobooks that way, like the radio dramas of the 40s and 50s. And when I couldn't find any, it took me 2 days of Googling. It's like, I just was convinced I was doing something wrong. I'm like, what words am I not putting together here? And then the light bulb went off that nobody had done that yet. And having a marketing background, like if I can learn to podcast a novel, I can spin a big deal about this, even though I don't actually have a publishing deal.
Right.
And then put out Earthcore as a free, unabridged, serialized podcast novel, and put out a few press releases, and was able to get rolling from there. And then started to build up a fan base, and after that, just have been giving away books ever since. That was March 2005, and I've been doing it every Sunday since.
Okay. Yeah. And so your fan base grew pretty quickly, correct? Once you started releasing those podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And, talk about the first kind of, all these publishers wouldn't sign you, you thought you had a great book, great content. When did your first book get printed, even though you did the podcast?
Well, I was totally convinced that I was going to get to 10,000 subscribers and then be able to show that to publishers, and they would be hitting me in the face with rolls of 20s, just like, come, sign with us, man, sign with us. So I was like, it was heads down. Let's just get to 10,000 subscribers, and I did that, and I showed it to my agent, who was already super angry that I was giving away the audiobook for free.
Right.
He's like, that's going to mess up everything. What are you doing? We're going to lose the audio rights. And went ahead with that anyways. And then when I got 10,000 subscribers, tried to show that to the agent and show that to publishers, and they were like, what is this? We don't even know what this is. Well, it's a podcast. What is that? I'm like, well, it's this thing on the internet. I'm like, well, we're not so sure about the internet. We don't know about this. It's dangerous.
Right.
And so I was stumped. And then the subscriber base kept growing. And then I worked with a small Canadian imprint called Dragon Moon Press, and we put out Earthcore in print and trade paperback, and learned a lot about that. And then I ramped up, and I kind of looked at Amazon and realized, well, if I can get my 10,000 fans to all go buy the book in the same day, then all of a sudden I'll be at the top of the Amazon ranks, maybe. I wasn't sure.
Right.
So we put out one called Ancestor, and Ancestor did a big grassroots campaign for it, a lot of free PDFs, a lot of free stuff. And then when it came out, it was the within a couple hours, is the #1 book in horror, #1 book in sci-fi on Amazon, and was the #2 fiction book overall on Amazon behind Harry Potter, one of the Harry Potter books. So which was awesome. So all of a sudden I'm at the top of the Amazon charts. And at that point, Amazon wasn't reporting to the New York Times.
Right.
So there's no idea if we sold enough to chart there. But I had a new agent, and he had put a book called Infected on many new desks in New York. And there were like 20 people who were moderately interested in it. Then they saw that this guy had come out of nowhere and topped the charts on Amazon. And this is pre-ebook. So there were no ebooks on Amazon. This was straight up $14.95 to get the trade paperback from an author that nobody's ever heard of. And then because they liked Infected and saw that they didn't know what I had done, but they just knew I was topping all of their books. And then that Infected went into auction and wound up with Crown. And wound up with a 5-book deal with Crown. I've been rolling ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So when that all started, there was really no ebook industry. How has that changed your thoughts on publishing and getting your books out to market? Because there's a lot of people out there now that are self-publishing and getting millions and millions of book sales. Yeah,
there's the upper crust. There's people who are selling 500,000 to 1 million books a year, and the Hugh Howeys and Amanda Hawkins, and you've heard of them. But then there's a lot of people that are selling 5, 10, 15,000 copies a year and are really happy with the amount of sales that they have. And that's all been fascinating to watch. And also it's been fascinating to kind of be locked out of that, because when I signed with Crown, they let me do a thing or a young adult series called the Galactic Football Series. But watching people put out sci-fi thrillers and various styles of books that I do and rack up these incredible sales on Amazon at $5 a pop, collecting 70% of every sale, just doing wonderful. And I can't do any of that because now I've got a no-compete clause in the contract I signed back in 2007. So from my perspective, it's been a little frustrating to watch other people, play the game, play the number system, put out a really good product, figure out how to get in front of people, and then let Amazon's, if you like this, you'll like this, go to work. And if you sell a certain number of copies and Amazon starts to do your marketing for you, that's where those big sales come from. The Amanda Hawkins and the Hugh Howeys didn't do anything themselves to sell that million, but they got to a threshold. Then Amazon system kicks in, then it's a great book, and then all of a sudden, Katie barred the door. So we haven't been able to do that. We have been able to put out our independent Galactic Football League novels as ebooks, and those have done really well for us. But we've also already saturated our audience because we put them out as limited edition hardcovers first. Then we all put them out as ebooks, put them out as paperbacks. We're just now getting into some ebook only novellas from that series.
Okay.
And our mission right now in our company is we want to get 10 to 15 really good products out there and then start to market it. Because we don't know a whole lot about ebooks other than that more is more. And people with 5, 6, 7 books tend to sell higher numbers of those individual books, because there's some kind of customer perception. If you come in and you just see one book, you're like, she's probably not very good. She's only got one book. So somebody you've never heard of. If you come in and she's got 7, you're like, whoa, man, she must be solid. She's got 7 books. And the audience still hasn't quite got the concept that, she's got 7 books because she put 7 books up all by herself. It doesn't necessarily have any reflection on quality, but it's still there. If you see that row of books, those tend to sell better. So we're trying to get enough books up there so it looks impressive when we do our marketing. Nice. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, so I think that's how I discovered you, is kind of through that Amazon marketing machine. I read Old Man's War, and right after Old Man's War, it said, well, if you like this, you might like this book called Infected. And I went on there, and there were, I think there were like 100 reviews at the time, and it was all like 4 or 5 stars. So I was like, I'll give it a try. And ever since, I've been reading your books. So, yeah. What I'm interested in is you started your own publishing company, but you had a book deal. So how did you work that out? And then also, does your publisher have any problem with you continuing to release the audiobooks for free?
Well, we recently run into the problem with releasing the audiobooks for free. So I'll answer that one first. So when your novel goes into a bidding war, that's a crazy experience for somebody who's coming to work at 2 in the morning so he can abuse the printer and the copier to send out, I'm going to print out 300 pages of this and send this out, and here's 20 more submissions to go out. So just totally commando style trying to get the book out there. Then all of a sudden people are bidding on your book. And my only instruction to the agent was like, I have no idea what's going on with any of this, so you take care of this, but I get to keep giving away my books for free, my audiobooks for free, because these are the people who got me here, so these are the people I'm going to continue to cater to. And that was my only qualification. And if a publisher didn't want to allow me to give away free audiobooks, free serialized audiobooks, then like, don't bid, because I won't sign your contract no matter what you're offering. And Crown was good to go. There were 3 main publishers that were in it at the end, and Crown was like, absolutely, whatever you did to get this audience, keep this audience. So that was great. Then I signed with Crown, Steve Ross at Crown, and 2 weeks later, he had moved on to another publishing house. So, and when a new boss comes in, everything changes. But they let me do it for the first 3 books, for Infected, Contagious, and Ancestor, and then we put out Nocturnal in May of this year, excuse me, May of last year, and they just flat out didn't put out the audiobook at all. And we could not figure out what was going on. And now we know, because they are subletting the books to Recorded Books, and Recorded Books is like, we're not going to put out a book if he's giving it away for free. Right. So now all of a sudden, the one contractual stipulation I had has run into, it's kind of run into some red tape with the publisher. So we're trying to figure out how to get that audiobook out. And you look at it, it makes everybody's side in the argument makes perfect sense. It's just we want to put out the audiobook for free. That's not in their best interest, so they're opting out of that. So we're trying to get the audiobook rights ourselves and put that out. So that part has gotten a little bit dicey. Yeah. As far as putting out our own books, I had, I'm the son of a football coach and from a football family and huge sci-fi nerd. So I kind of combined the two for this Galactic Football League series, which is a young adult series. It's an American Pro Football League 700 years in the future, with aliens playing different positions based on physiology. So you've got receivers and defensive backs who can jump 20 feet in the air, and 1,200-pound linemen and linebackers that literally want to eat you, that kind of thing. It's really fun, and the whole series is actually it's a metaphor for the racial unifying power of sports, and how in sports it's really, no matter what your prejudices are, it becomes a meritocracy immediately. I don't like that guy's religion, but he's really good at running the ball, so we'll just let that slide. And I had this book, The Rookie, and offered it to Crown when they signed me. I'm like, I got this. This is going to be, I'm like, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. It's going to be like Harry Potter for jocks. You guys got to sign this. And they just sort of opted out. So I had this perfectly good book. I'm like, do you guys mind if I put this out myself? And they're like, well, as long as it's not in stores, it's not a problem. And you could tell it was one of those things like, how nice. He wants to put out his little book. You go right ahead and put out your little book. And I was like, awesome, thank you. And then cute. Yeah. They were like, oh, that's cute. And they thought once I had Infected out that I would stop doing that and stop giving the podcast away for free. So they totally honored their word. But when they said sure, they were like, give him 2 weeks. He'll be fine. Don't worry. After he's done for book tour, he won't want to do these things anymore. But we had another idea with the existing fan base, because we give stuff away. We give 30 to 45 minutes of content away free at least once a week, usually twice, sometimes even 3 times a week. Just constantly keep free stuff coming down the feed. We got this idea. We're like, what if we ask them to pay $35 for it 10 months ahead of time, and we get all the money in, and then we'll have all of the cash flow to put out a hardcover book. And we did that, and we sold 3,000 copies of that book, and had all the money in to make a really tricked out hardcover. And then when September comes at the start of football season, we send that book out. So we've done that 4 times with the 4 books in this series, and it's been very successful for us. And we've since we're selling out of the hardcovers, 2 of the 4 titles are just sold out. We'll never reprint the hardcovers again. Now we're putting them out in paperback, putting them out in ebook, and we also put out the audiobooks for them. So we've got the 4 novels, 3 novellas. We're actually to the point now we're starting to bring in voice talent other than myself to record the books, because I'm finding out I'm not as scalable. So
talk about that a little bit, because you record all these books on your own. Mm-hmm. But I feel like they're very professionally well done. Did it start out that way, or have you just grown into this, audiobook recorder over the years?
Kind of grown into it. We put out the first book, Earthcore, and I worked for a company in San Francisco, SNP Communications, that did kind of talk radio programs for Fortune 500 companies. So the CEO would sit down, like Scott McNeely would sit down, and then you'd interview a couple sales guys, a couple distributors, and they did an amazing job of communicating to a larger company. But they had all this recording gear in there. So they had a full-on recording studio. So when I found out about podcasting for EarthCore, I'm like, I got to learn how to record. I got to learn, what is this RSS? I have to figure out how these things work. I need a website. But I would go in at 2 o'clock in the morning and record 4 or 5 chapters. And I had no idea what I was doing. So it kind of adopted this crazy midnight DJ persona to introduce all the episodes, which maintains to this day. But then to make my buddies laugh, we grew up in a really small town in Michigan, and there was literally nothing to do but play D&D and go to the movies. So we would play D&D every weekend, and then we would go to the same movie 4 and 5 times a week, and we would just do imitations of all the characters in the movie. So we all had our Eddie Murphy, we all had our Richard Pryor. We were, at Saturday Night Live, we were all mimicking every character, and we just would bounce these. So I was able to come in for EarthCore without any acting experience, but I knew how to do funny voices. So I just gave every character its own individual voice, and then that has become a strong suit. That I've gotten pretty good at over the past 7 years. So now that's what the audience has come to expect. And then because I started out in an actual recording studio, when I got booted when they caught me, the boss came in at 2 in the morning to work. She's like, "What are you doing here?" Okay, I'm busted. So I went to I got about a 600 square foot apartment in San Francisco with a very small closet, and that became the recording studio. So I moved a Flower Power iMac in there, put in a little desk, and had the clothes all around, and would record in my closet. So that was the next 2 years of the process. And then became obsessed when I heard the quality difference in sound. Drove me crazy. So I started buying gear and learning how to record to try and get it to sound really professional.
Right.
And then we got an actual audio booth that went in the closet. So sneak in the closet and have to shimmy. I would have other people come over, and they were like, they're 200-pound guys. They could not get in. It's like just really had to wedge your way in there. And became obsessed with making it high quality. And now that I actually listen to other people's audiobooks, we're really, really proud of that, because most audiobooks you'll get off of Audible or iTunes, we blow them out of the water. Our stuff sounds really, really good. And our mission has always been, even before we started selling the condensed audiobooks, if I'm going to take 30 minutes of somebody's time that they'll never get back, we're going to make sure that is absolute, that there is not one better quality thing out there. We will have the best quality audio, period. So now the system's really dialed in, and it's nice because we got just go in and record, and we put those episodes, we do the podcast, put them all together, and then sell that as a downloadable audiobook. And that's one of the things we're very happy to hear from people, is like, this sounds fantastic. So quality audio is a big priority for us.
Definitely. So it seems like, a lot of what you do is for the fans, and you want to make sure they're getting the most out of the experience, whether it's listening to your book or reading it. What's more important to you, that fan loyalty and retention, or the writing awards? What are you looking to achieve over the next couple of years?
Our job is to make the fans happy. That's what our job is. We're not. We've got what we feel are some important messages and themes in the book, and if people get something out of it, that's great. But for the most part, people are reading or listening to my stuff to escape their day-to-day life. They want to go experience some other world for a little while. So keeping really high-quality content that the fans expect, keeping that coming to them is the most important thing. So that's way more important than any of the awards or anything. The awards, if you get nominated for something or win something, that's really good, and it's flattering to the ego, but the biggest thing is making sure that the customers are happy. As we started all this out, I wouldn't have anything without a bunch of diehard fans who are clamoring for the next episode every week. And then when we put out Ancestor, we're like, I've been giving you guys this stuff away free for 4 years. Do you mind buying a book? And they were like, just boom, and we knocked it out of the park with Amazon. So like, my dad had a phrase. He was a football coach, as I mentioned. But he would run a play, and if it was successful, he would run the same play, 90% of the game, and everybody would be complaining, like, your games are so boring. It's like, we won 42-6. They could not stop that play, so we ran that play.
Right.
And his phrase was always, you dance with the one that brought you. So if you've done something to get to a place, and people have taken care of you, then you take care of those people. So the fans are the most important thing to us. There were times when I was working a day job or two and trying to record audio to put out in the feed. Like, I was literally writing a novel, recording that novel, editing that novel just to make sure something hit the feed on Sunday. We were just killing ourselves to get that out, but we didn't want to lose that. Like, that's What we do is we give you that every Sunday. That's why you keep coming back. So the fans are the most important thing. Taking care of them is job one.
So I consider myself a very kind of relaxed, laid-back fan of yours. Talk about some of your more extreme fans and the following that you've kind of gathered over the years. And, you know, I go to your blog and I see these people with tattoos of characters on their arms and things like that.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and how you've grown that loyalty.
That's awesome. I'm not going to lie to you. Somebody sends you a picture and like their back is a tattoo of something that you made up. It's like just, wow. Just ego just swelling so big you can't get through the door. But it's great. It's great to see that people enjoy it that much that they literally want that to be a permanent part of them. The team logos from the Galactic Football League are a really big one. And Infected is a story of ex-linebacker for the University of Michigan, blew out his knee, never made it to the pros, who's working a desk job as a customer support guy. And he gets these 7 rashes, these tiny little rashes on various parts on his body. And what he doesn't know at the time is that these are spores that are going to tap into his bloodstream and use the nutrients there to build, to grow. And they also tap into his nervous system, and they use his nervous system like it's their own internet so that they can talk to each other through his body. And a final part of that is they tap into his 7th cochlear nerve, and so they start talking to him. So he hears voices in his head, but they are actual real voices. He's just the only one who can hear it because it bypasses the ear. And as these things grow, they grow into these triangular shaped growths on his body, and that has become an extremely popular tattoo for people. And it's a really, if you don't like a little bit of the messy stuff, don't read that book, because most everyone who gets infected by this finds a place to hide, get away from everybody, and let these things grow. And that's what they're telling you to do, is just run and hide so you avoid the police and avoid hospitals. But Perry's got a bit of a rage issue. The main character is beaten as a child and has a cycle of violence he's been trying to break. So he decides he's going to cut these things out of himself before they can reach their final growth phase. So it's really gross. It's a really gross book. But
a lot of science, though.
It's really packed in with science, and explain the process of what they do in the brain and where they grow, and it's very fun. But that's the weirdest one to people. Like a lot of triangle tattoos of people getting that image somewhere on their body. One girl's got it on her inside lip. And then people will, to give away a little bit of the book, one guy just sent me a picture where they're called hatchlings when they come out, where it's actually coming out of the body. And it's just, this guy's got blood tattooed on his arm just to show how things work.
Right.
And that's amazing. And
so you don't have any of your own characters?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet.
I have one tattoo of our company's called, and now we're changing it to Empty Set Entertainment. So I have an Empty Set tattoo, kind of a personal philosophy of things. We'll get one eventually.
Okay.
So we do that, and then we have ScottSigler.com is like 16,000 people signed up. We get the newsletter every week, and there's a certain group of people whose social circle has primarily become the people on that site. We get email that so-and-so from California flew to New York to go hang out with their buddy from the site, and that people have their own spontaneous get-togethers, marginally to talk about my content, but they just kind of get, because they're crazy threads that are incredibly long. People just chatting back and forth and say that has nothing to do with me anymore. So now we've become this weird little social hub where people get together. And then every year we do a thing called Sigler Fest. So we have people fly in from all over the country to come hang out for 3 or 4 days in Vegas. And then the weirdest thing to me is when we do those hardcover books, we have Hell Week, because this is my business partner, A. When we first did it, we assumed to send out 2,000 copies of a hardcover book, it would be 4 10-hour days. It wound up being 9 14-hour days, because we just had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
So then for book 2, we emailed the fans. Anybody want to come work for us for free? We'll give you a beer. Come on. And we had 4 or 5 people, and then for book 4, we had 17 people showed up for 2 days each, and we looked like a sweatshop. It was awesome. We had all these tables lined up, and people are stamping and numbering and signing, and they just came to do that, to hang out and help out.
But only your sign, actually.
Oh yeah, signing 3,000 books at once takes a long time, especially if you're putting a personal message to everybody in each book. So the fan base is great, but the tattoos are fun. But the real shocking thing is having watched people make lifelong friendships that would not have existed if they hadn't all been playing in our sandbox.
Right.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So one other topic that I wanted to talk about is Nocturnal, your most recent book. You're in the process of trying to make that into a TV show. Can you explain that and you know, who's producing it and the process there? I think that's a pretty interesting story. Well, first talk about Nocturnal and what the story is around that.
Nocturnal is it's really densely packed with a couple different areas of science, so it's hard to tell too much about it without giving away the big reveal.
Right.
But largely, it's my homage to '80s buddy cop movies. So if you've ever watched like Trading Places, Lethal Weapon, anything from back in the day, you've got the two joking cops, one more serious than the other. So it starts out as kind of a buddy cop procedural. Our two characters are Brian Clouser, trigger happy, shot one too many guys, and the guy is Pookie Chang, who's the jokester and everybody loves him. And it intentionally starts out as like, okay, I've seen this movie 1,000 times before. And hopefully you go, I love this movie already because I've seen this one 1,000 times before. And they start to, Brian starts to have dreams of these really awful mutilations, these murders that are way beyond the pale. And the next day they will go out to investigate a lead, and they will find a body that is mutilated in exactly that style. So right off the bat, in the first 50 pages, all of a sudden it shifts from this is a jovial buddy cop CSI procedural to the happy-go-lucky guy, Pookie, assuming that his partner and his best friend is a serial killer and a really sick one at that. And then as they start to investigate what's going on, it becomes a balance between a police officer trusting the evidence in front of him and trusting his heart and believing that this guy couldn't possibly do it. And as they investigate, they uncover a cult that has existed since San Francisco has been founded, a very murderous cult that the police have been shielding and protecting since the police department has been founded. So you've got a 200-year-old conspiracy, and they are going through the city, and most of the cult operations happen in the tunnels. There's a lot of tunnels in San Francisco. There's Chinatown. There's a lot of World War II emplacements, a lot of things from World War I, Civil War. There's many, many miles of tunnels. And as they start to go under to find this culture under the city and start to try and find out what's going on to clear Brian's name. And then things get nutty from there.
Right.
So
that's where it's calm and relaxed.
This is still, yeah, you're largely in. For the first 150 pages, you're like, okay, it's not what I thought was coming, but this is pretty exciting. And then the shit hits the fan.
Right.
And things just get wild from there. So it's a giant 500-plus page book. It's huge. The publisher didn't even want to publish it. It's too big. And so we slimmed it down a little bit, but it's been described as an urban fantasy, even though there's not one supernatural element in it. It's all hardcore science with a little liberty to the science, which you can see at the end.
Right.
But the story of how Nocturnal came to be a TV show goes back to the same way you discovered me. You read John Scalzi's Old Man's War. You might like this. You picked it up. You became a fan. Lloyd Levin, who is the producer of Hellboy, Hellboy 2, Die Hard 2, and The Watchman, these crazy monster-specific movies. There might be monsters in Nocturnal. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a spoiler there. He read a book, and then Amazon said, if you like this, you'll like this. So he said, okay, and he bought Nocturnal and read Nocturnal on his Kindle and had never heard of me. All the stuff that I've done, he'd never heard of me, never knew anything. And we get an email to the website, the standard contact us form, didn't come through the publisher or anything, like, I'm a movie producer. I would like to talk to you about Nocturnal. We're like, yeah, whatever, because we do. We get those about every other week.
Right.
And usually it's usually someone who's aspiring or a startup, or like, I've done this 5-minute YouTube movie. Can I option your book? And we're like, well, no, but let's stay in touch. Maybe there's something else that we can do. Here's a short story. Would you like to do this? And we've had people take a short story and make films out of them. So we're like, okay, whatever. And then we Google him and go IMDb him, and we're like, holy crap. This is the guy who did Watchmen. Are you kidding me? And then we've been talking, that was about a year ago, and originally wanted to do it as a movie.
Yep.
And just got to the point where the book is so dense that 2 hours was not going to cut it. So he changed his mind, like, would you mind doing this as a TV show? It's not as much money, but we give you 12 hours instead of 2. And I was like, that would be awesome. Because you watch, I don't remember watches Game of Thrones, but try and take any of the Game of Thrones book and turn that into a 2-hour movie, and it would be crap.
Right.
There'd be, here's a midget and here's some people with swords and yay, people fight. And like that's all you could get in 2 hours compared to the layers and the complexity that are in those books and that they managed to bring to life in the series. Or, True Blood or any of the fictional novels that have been turned into TV series. They're just doing an amazing job with those. The storytelling is fantastic. So we're really excited about that. And the pilot script is done. And Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, who did a show called The Sentinel back in the 90s, have written the pilot script for it. And I was, I'm an artist, people. I was like, all right, let's see what you Hollywood butchers do to my book for this first script. And we went back and forth on plot points. But they sent back the first script, and I made probably 9 comments. Like, we might do this instead of this. It was perfect. It was great. So now the pilot script is done. I'm really excited about it. Lloyd is planning to take this out to various networks and see if we can land a show. And it all started because, if you like this, you might like this. It's crazy to think of that.
Right.
'Cause I spend a lot of time marketing and trying to get my name out there, like trying to go get attention, because my work doesn't really fall into it's not traditional sci-fi, or it's not the sci-fi with a message, or it's not the let's be careful of all of what's going on with cybersecurity. Cory Doctorow, this is this cool thing that people are worried about and reading about. It's like my stuff's sci-fi and horror and action adventure and thriller, and it's all mashed together and set in a modern day thriller. There's no handle on it, so to speak.
Right.
So trying to get attention from that regard, it's been very difficult to do. And I have not had the runaway bestseller Hunger Games kind of a thing happen. I mean, if that happens, obviously, then you've got your choice of who you want to make the movie. So for this random thing to happen and everybody involved with it is really excited and thinks this is going to be a really special show has been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it happens. I'm looking forward to it.
Nocturnal, I have a slug line. Now I got it. Lethal Weapon meets Hellboy. So there you go.
Okay.
There you go. I wasted 10 minutes of your time because I couldn't remember that.
In terms of your other books, do you have visions for them outside of print in terms of TV shows, movies, like what you would want to see them turned into?
Well, Infected, the first one, was actually optioned for a movie right out of the gate. So I had the bidding war and then signed with Crown, and then 2 weeks later the movie was optioned by Rogue Pictures. It was nuts. I was like, I can't believe this is all happening. And then find out 2 years later they just didn't make the movie, which is what normally happens.
Right.
Authors get things optioned, things almost never get actually produced. So that book, Infected, I want to really see that as a movie, because I think it fits well into 2 hours, and I think it would be an amazing vehicle for a young actor to go from being the mild-mannered Clark Kent sitting at the support desk, this huge arc where they have to wind up at the end being kind of a raving psychopath, and watching someone be able to pull that off. So I want to see Infected turned into a movie, because I think it could totally make an actor's career to show that breadth in one
Right.
span. That would be the really cool thing to see. And it'd be a little gory and be a little fun. And then Contagious, there's 3 books in the series: Infected, Contagious, and Pandemic. Pandemic should be out in October or early next year. And the concept is the alien invasion, but from the perspective of that hapless sucker who's just one of the numbers. So in Infected, in the first week, 5,000 people died. He's one of those 5,000 people that you never hear anything about. Has no perspective, has no idea what's going on. He's just one of the first victims, and you watch his arc. Then for Contagious, you pull the camera back and look at the national level of what's going on across the country. Bring in the president, the cabinet, FBI, a lot of the traditional X-Files type people you would see in these movies. And then for Pandemic, you pull it all the way out, and you get to see how it's affecting the entire world. So if Infected gets turned into a movie and does well, then Contagious and Pandemic would follow on after that. And Ancestor is straight up 80s creature feature. It's Predator, it's aliens, it's when you want to go to the movies to see people get eaten. It's pretty shameless in that regard.
Right.
It's hard science, and you get to see the different take on that is instead of in the first 2 minutes, you've got the janitor at midnight pushing the broom and a claw reaches out and pulls him in, so the monster's already formed. You get to see the monster go from a single cell that they have heavily engineered and then watch the nightmare of this thing developing into an animal that is completely off the rails of what they thought they had. Ancestor is, in effect, an effort to genetically engineer a herd animal with human organs to take care of the organ shortage problem. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people die because there's just not enough lungs and livers and kidneys. If you could have an animal where you could take those, xenotransplantation, take those, put them into people without any kind of immune system response, not only would you save millions of lives and add to the quality of life of a lot of people, you'd make a crap ton of money. So if you can perfect this thing, there's no end to the checks that you're going to be able to write. So they do that, and an Ancestor, instead of winding up with a 200-pound herbivore herd animal, they wind up with a 650-pound pack predator, and they're stuck on an island, because that's how these things always work. It's total Michael Crichton.
You have to be stuck on an
island. Yeah, I started writing this one 15 years ago when I was in this huge Michael Crichton binge, and it wound up being a really fun book. That would be a great one to see as a movie. That's a 2-hour movie, no question. Would not last as a miniseries. And you would get to see some awesome CGI. And fortunately, Stan Winston is no longer with us. But my dream, my goal in my 20s was to have Stan Winston do the special effects for one of the movies. He did Terminator. He did Aliens. He did a movie that I adore called Pumpkinhead that very few people have heard of and even less people like. So to watch a really high-grade creature feature out of one of them books would be excellent. And then the last one is the GFL series, which will never be, it's just impossible. It'd be $250 million on the drop of a hat to turn this into a movie, even with full-blown CGI. Because you've got 5 races playing football, and humans are just one of those races. So any on-field action is really complex. And then off the field, you're watching this racist farm boy who's been brought up to hate everything that isn't human, and pretty much everything that isn't his kind of human, get thrust into the bright lights in the big city of this professional league because he's a quarterback prodigy and he wants to be the best there's ever been. Well, to do that, you have to go play on the best teams, and the best teams have all the different races. So it would have to be a Green Lantern-esque movie, but even beyond that, because my aliens are not bipeds. They're not, they're not primates. They're not just people with funny skin and some crap on the bridge of their nose. These are aliens that have been evolved, like I've visualized the evolution from single cell in environments and into primitive forms, and they really look alien, and even communicating with them is a difficult thing. And in the story, there are races you can't communicate to. You have to have an interpreter because you can't figure out what the other person is saying. So it's not just on the field where that'd be a complicated thing to show. It's all of the personal interaction, and that would be a very difficult movie. But for an anime, it would be awesome. So my goal is hopefully to see that turned into a video game. There's a huge organized crime element in it too, because every franchise is owned by a gangster. Because of the huge racial hatred throughout the universe, there have to be laws. The overlord race, which is not humans. Humans are a subjugated race. There are these laws that you cannot pull over a team bus. You cannot, no search and seizure. You can't touch the players. So players all have diplomatic immunity. Now, as you can imagine, being a young professional athlete with diplomatic immunity is going to create its own source of problems. But the men and the women on these teams are largely pawns, because the real goal of the league is so that the gangsters can ship contraband and smuggle information on these ships, because the ships can't be touched.
Right.
So to have the gangsters will do anything to make a winning team, because if your team moves up the tiers to tier 1 and you're traveling all across the galaxy, you are very powerful in the information and the contraband that you can ship. So it's organized crime, it's sports, it's the big racial aspect of it, and I think it could be, a Game of Thrones-esque anime that could last for years, like an Attack of the Clones or a kind of thing from Star Wars. Right. So to see the aliens done right, that's the kind of thing I'd really like to see turned into computer-generated or anime.
Cool. So we've talked a lot about your books, kind of your publishing career. What's next on the horizon for you? Are you you have a couple series that are still active, but are what's next for you moving forward?
Well, pretty much the first thing right now is getting control of Nocturnal and Pandemic, the audiobook rights, so that we can get the books recorded and we can podcast it out to the fans. We'd like everything else, let everything else take care of itself as long as we're providing them their free stuff. Then we have the 5th book in the GFL series will be coming out next year. I start writing that pretty soon, and that's a 7-book arc, so still got a few more years in that. We are now hiring other authors to co-write books with me to try and follow the James Patterson model a little bit and try and, you're not scalable as an author. I mean, James Patterson's got that figured out down to a science. So trying to figure out how to put out quality content that the fans like, but also get some help so we can put out more of that stuff.
Right.
That's what we're doing right now. We got 4 novellas planned for next year. The TV show has been a big deal where we literally just clear blocks of time during the week just in case they need something. Because by the way, we need this, and we need this like right away. And you're like, get to work on it, having the time cleared out to do that. Pandemic will be the final book out for Random House at the beginning of next year, and that's the end of the 5-book deal. So we're trying to write a new book called Flyer that the agent will take out to the marketplace. And this will wind up being the most interesting thing because, 6 years ago when I signed with Crown, I got the brass ring that everybody was going for. Everybody wants to be signed with a major. Everybody wants a movie option. I found a way to get that done. And then in the interim, the entire industry has changed. Borders has gone out of business. Amazon has become the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You can write an ebook and not have to answer to anybody and make 70% per sale of your book instead of 12% you're making if you are, a bestseller. I'm sure Stephen King probably gets more, but there's this thin upper tier of people who sell 90% of the books in publishing. Then there's a really solid tier under that of people who are bestsellers. If you're in that tier, you can get up to 14, 15%. Everybody else, 8 to 12%. Right? So that was the goal, is to get the publishing deal, to go on book tour, see your book in stores. There aren't as many stores anymore. Nobody's doing book tours because they're not profitable enough, and you can just put out your own book. So I do Flyer, have my agent take that out, and we see what the marketplace says. So if the advance is like a typical advance for a first-time novelist is $5,000, say we get that. Say people are like, okay, your book sold so-so, but we'd like you, but here's $15,000 for the advance for your first book. I mean, for us, that's like, no, absolutely not. We can put this out on our own, and we will do much better than that and have full control over the cover, full control over the design. We get to hire our own editor who knows our stuff extremely well. So that has to get up to a certain level. So that's the part I'm most looking forward to, is seeing how things shake out when you take a book into the marketplace. Because now we, as creators in any stripe, you can be your own boss. There's a number of ways to put stuff out where you're in charge and you control everything. And the part I forgot to mention, I think, is that I run advertising on the podcast. If you want my audiobooks for free, no problem. Here they are, 60-second ad before every episode. We're all used to that from television. Nobody minds. And then the ads are a revenue stream for us. And they're like, oh, I can't stand ads. No problem. It's $20 here on iTunes. Buy it, download it, or buy the book and read it. It's totally up to you. So if we go out with a deal and somebody throws a ton of money at us for an advance, and then they're like, yeah, but you can't podcast it, that cuts into the content. Like it's just not doable for us, because we're a media company. We're an entertainment company. We sell advertising against our content, and that's where most of our revenue comes from. So watching what will happen when we take the next book out probably 5 or 6 months from now, and to see how much everything has changed. Because I haven't been able to do a lot of these things because I've been locked in with Crown. Right. I can't wait to see what happens. It'll be crazy if somebody's like, here's a really good advance, and we'll just be like, God, we'd love to do that, but we can't. Right. We just can't, because we don't know if you're going to promote us. That's the other thing. Right. You're going to tell us you're going to promote us, then you're not, then we're dead in the water for the next 3 years. Whereas if we control our own destiny, maybe we don't make as much, but that same deal, controlling your own content 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road, when we are 60 and trying to figure out where our back catalog revenue is coming from, if we control that, making less now makes for a much more successful long-term business. Right. So do that, and trying to think, it's weird, we're trying to think 20 and 30 years down the road and make our decisions based on that.
Cool. I want to let you guys know that we have flash drives for everyone with, I think, most of the GFL series on it, or all of it.
Yep.
Those are kind of free giveaways. And then I want to open it up for a few minutes for Q&A. And there's a mic in the back, but you can probably just say it loud enough to...
Thanks, Scott. First of all, thanks for coming. Second of all, love your work ethic, love the creativity that you have both in your writing and also in business. Would love to understand a little bit more about the creative process behind the writing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you come up with an idea? How do you build out the characters? What is that? I know the process is probably different for every individual.
Right.
What is that process like for you?
So where do the ideas come from, and then how do you manifest them?
And think, this is my guy.
Do you mind repeating the question real quick, just
Yeah.
so we get it on?
Yeah. So how do I get the ideas, and then once I have the idea, how do I massage that idea up into an actual full-blown book, and what is the process involved in that? Yeah. The idea is, I have the opposite problem of writer's block. I have an incredibly short attention span and ideas just all day. I wrote 3 books on the walk here. I'm not even kidding. I passed a gated library. I'm like, oh, that's a cool place. What can we do with that? So there's trying to control the overwhelming amount of this is the greatest idea I've ever had. I have to stop everything I'm doing and go write this is a constant challenge, which my business partner's critical in. She controls what's being worked on when. We have like quarterly meetings, like, okay, you really want to do this, you can do this, but then you have to stop doing these things. And it gets, I get all angsty and try and figure out what I want to work on. But then, so once we have the idea and we know what we're working on, I'm very fortunate in that I get up in the morning, I look at my calendar, and the projects are blocked out. You're working on this, you're working on this, you're working on this. So that's something I'm bad at, and she's very good at, so that works out really well for us. The ideas come from, I really am a big fan of science, not a scientist, but I read as many blogs as I can, and New Scientist is just, it's hard to go through one issue of New Scientist without taking notes on 4 or 5 different new projects, because biology is mesmerizing, all the amazing things that we do. And then hacking biology is a big one for me, not so much in the computer sciences, but every time I see somebody tweak a genome or do something, I'm like, that's great, let's do that. So a lot of times, that idea will stick, okay? Like, let's insert this particular genome into humans so that they produce this particular hormone which defeats this particular symptom they are suffering of lupus. Let's do that, that's worked into pandemic, by the way. So this is a case study. And that will just sit there. But that's not a good enough story on its own because there's no drama, there's no arc. And then, like for Ancestor, I learn about the organ shortage, and that sticks. And then I learn about chimeras, which is where you are taking genetic information from one animal, one or more animals, and putting them into another animal. You wind up with a chimera. And thinking that, well, wait a minute, what if we were to do all of these things and we could have organs? And then you learn about endogenous retroviruses, or viruses that are kind of stuck in your genome. And if you start messing with this stuff, well, these things come out and you get a crazy bird flu and everyone dies. Like, that's something they're actually concerned about. I don't really get how all that works. I just know everyone dying is a good plot point. So when I say everyone can die, you are going to pull the book a little bit closer, right? So I got that. And then I learned about, so all of these things stick in the head. And then I learned about the work of, I think, Blair Hodges, I believe is his name, who did a genetic analysis of all mammalia and figured out that the main branches branched off well before the extinction event that kind of cleared the dinosaurs and cleared the field for mammals to take over. There had always been this premise that it's this one ancestor of all of us, and then the dinosaurs went away, and then it went through rapid expansion into all the available niches. But it's not. The main branch of mammalia were already there. So like there were tiny little hippos, okay, and they were hiding just like the tiny little shrews. And then all of that came together. I'm like, okay, so what if they do this genetic sequencing, get the genome of everything, get rid of all the original, like if this gene is only found in tigers, we'll remove that. And if you remove everything that's unique and take everything that's common, you basically have the original genome of the ancestor of all mammals. So what if we do that? Then what if we genetically sequence that or put it in the computer so we can do evolution on the computer? And then what if we tweak that? Okay, now what if we're going to tweak that in order to make a new animal that is going to have human harvestable organs, but we know it's clean, there's no retroviruses in there because we can control it. We can see that in the genome. So now we've got this perfectly clean animal. It's going to solve the organ shortage problem, and then we're going to be doing this. And then I discovered this great, I think it's an Oglio machine, I'm not sure, that actually prints proteins. And you can print custom protein right from a computer. I'm like, okay, we'll bring that together. Let's just jazz this up so it can actually print a full chromosome. Okay, now it can do that. There's my hand waving, and then all of a sudden, you've got this animal. What are we going to put this animal in? Well, then I learned about the efforts to bring back the ibex or various extinct animals, where they will take a close relative. I think they tried to do this with a species of buffalo. They enucleate the egg of a cow, pull out the cow genome in the egg, and they take this genome they've cloned, stick it in there, and stick it right back in the cow. Because since it's got the egg protein coding, the cow should recognize that as self, and hopefully it'll be able to gestate in there. The C-section will pull it out, and they've actually done this. They've actually brought back extinct animals by letting them gestate inside a close relative. So all that
extremely
crashed.
Simple process.
Yeah.
Like,
Understand what she does.
yeah.
All of that crams together to make the novel ancestor, and then you just, and of course, science goes horribly wrong, and then you get to have a lot of fun from there. They don't know the genome that they're controlling, and you get giant 650-pound pack predators with Dimetrodon sails on the back of their head, and it's wicked fun. It's so fun. It's a fun book. So that's how that process. Once you get those ideas, and I get all excited and call A and be like, we gotta do this one, we gotta do this one. Then you start to outline it. Then I take my layman's knowledge of science and do my research, and I hammer out a really strict outline. And then a benefit from giving crap away free for 7 years is a lot of scientists and policemen and firemen and soldiers have emailed me to say, I can tell you're trying to get what we do right, and that matters to us. So if you ever need help, call me up. I'm a biology PhD at Harvard. Call me anytime. You're like, awesome, put that in the Rolodex. So now I've got this amazing battery of people who are experts in their fields, and I send them the outline.
Cool.
They will go through the outline and say, okay, you kind of got the idea, but this could never happen, and here's why this could never happen. Try this instead. Take that back. Cobble together another outline, write the first draft. First draft is a real pain in the ass, because I'm long-winded, as you can tell, right? All of this goes onto the page as well. Then I'll write the first draft, turn that back over to the scientists and the soldiers and the cops, and have them go through it, and then they just tear it apart. And it's really not a fun part of the process to know that this plot thread that you fell in love with and literally spent a week of your life every day working on it to get it just right, it's got to go. It just flat out doesn't work. Then they give me the feedback. I go from there, and then by the second draft, things are pretty much blocked out, and then we go through the regular draft process with the editor at Crown.
So
that's how we do it.
We're out of time. We're going to hand out the flash drives now. There are a few books for sale in the back for $5 each, and Scott's more than willing to sign those if you want. But thank you for being here today. We appreciate it, and hopefully you guys all have a chance to enjoy Scott's work.
Thank you.